In with Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. And now, here are your hosts, Max Rabin and Brent Jackson.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Keyed In Podcast. I'm Max Rabin.
And I am Brent Jackson.
Brent, what's your favorite part of a real estate transaction?
Wow, caught me off guard there. I wanted to say the closing, but then that's like so not what an agent should say at the closing
I think
table.
it's fine if an agent says that settlement is the best part. Come on.
No, I don't think it is. All right, so now that I had like 30 seconds to think about it, I think it's at the time of ratification or signing a listing agreement, because then it's like, all right, boom, on to the next one.
Okay.
When you get to the closing table, it's already done, so you have to go out and find the new deal. So once you sign a listing agreement or you sign a deal that's ratified, to me, that's the most exciting part.
Okay, maybe that's the most exciting part, but there is an extreme level of satisfaction to closing and finally getting paid when you know it's done. Am I wrong? Am I right?
No, that's right. But if it's a smooth deal, I don't care so much. I think it's like it was a smooth deal. It's going to close. We just had one close yesterday that developer kicking and screaming to the table. You have the three banks that have collapsed in the last 30 days. So it put a lot of backlog on our developer. The listing agent and the seller didn't understand that, but it kept going sideways. And like, yes, that one I was, thank God that we closed on that one.
Okay, fair enough.
Closings can be difficult or they can be very easy.
That's true. Well, we're talking today with someone, our guest is a settlement attorney. This is Evelyn Miller on the show today. And all of her closings are smooth. We know this.
All of them.
All of them.
Whoa. But the one we closed with yesterday was with Smart Settlements, and they did a phenomenal job. They knocked it out of the park because Crystal, who was with you guys, had to manage both sides of this deal. So it was a seamless transaction from their side. They handled it beautifully.
Well,
thank you for saying that.
Evelyn, welcome to the show. We're just really happy for you to be here with us. We had an attorney on the show really early on when we first started, like way back in the day. And we haven't had any other attorneys on, so we're trying to think about like how to bring an attorney back on the show to make it interesting. And we just thought like you would be helpful here.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Because I don't know. I mean, like title attorneys and title law is one of those funny things where it's an absolute necessity for everything we do, especially in our jurisdictions here. But a lot of people don't understand it, like
Totally.
The entire role, and it also varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction around the country.
Right.
So what title attorneys do here in DC is very specific to this area.
It is. Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started in law and how you got into the title business?
Yeah, sure. So fun fact, I actually started in real estate when I was like 16 years old. My very first job that wasn't like working for my parents was being an assistant real estate agent. So
at 16?
At 16.
Nice.
So my parents, I'm from Los Angeles, and my parents actually moved a lot when I was growing up. And I used to always think it was very exciting. It's very common to like lease in Los Angeles rather than buy. And so every couple years, my parents would be looking for a new house. We had a very good friend who was a real estate agent. She's still a real estate agent in Los Angeles now. And so I had seen like every house in Los Angeles by the time I was like able to drive. And so this real estate agent, her name is Dee Crawford, she offered me a job being her assistant and like showing houses. And there were all these rules, like I couldn't actually say the price, for example.
Right.
So I would basically sit in these empty houses. She's like, just, dress up, like look older, and just kind of like politely like usher people through the house. And if somebody asks you a question about the house, like you have the pamphlet, so I would just kind of slide the pamphlet across the table. I couldn't actually say anything.
Right, because you're not a licensed individual.
I'm not at all.
Right.
I'm literally a high school student. So that was actually my first kind of, venture into just real estate at all. And then I went to law school at Emory in Atlanta, had no interest in real estate law, didn't even understand. I mean, I can remember buying my first house and like I had no idea what was going on at settlement. I think that's actually prepared me well for doing settlements now, because I kind of remember like being an educated and intelligent person, but just not knowing anything about what's happening when you're buying a house. Because I don't think we teach people this, you know? So, and I mean, it's something that most people will do maybe once, twice, 3 times in their whole life, so we don't get a lot of practice doing this either. So went to Emory in Atlanta, started doing insurance defense litigation, like it just pays well. So, got offered that kind of a job coming straight out of law school, kind of immediately knew it wasn't for me, wasn't enjoying it. And so I actually was thinking about being a real estate agent at that point, like maybe law is not for me. So I was connected to a broker and I took a meeting with her.
In Atlanta?
In Atlanta, yeah. And she had her settlement attorney at the meeting. I guess she was like, you're a lawyer, you must want to be in like real estate law, not. And I was actually like, no, I'm here to be an agent, But her settlement attorney just offered me a job on the spot, like when I met him. And I was like, well, it's not really what I came here for. But he's like, oh, no, you'll be fine. Like, just,
right.
Come in next week and like try it. I have no idea what I'm doing.
It's quite different from like the idea of being a realtor, because you had acexperience in that. And now you're like going into the law office.
I had no idea. Like literally, I didn't know anything about what happened. You don't learn this in law school either.
Right.
So I showed up at his office. I read through an entire loan package and I made all these notes about what everything is. My first closing, and you guys will appreciate this, I explained every paragraph of the deed of trust.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah.
Like the realtors were like ready to slit their wrists at the table.
That's like on the opposite side where a buyer is like, all right, I got to read every line by line, every.
Oh, I explained every paragraph. Like, and I know they were. I was wondering why everybody was so like irritated with me by the
very
end of the
awkward
closing.
situation.
Right. And like I came out of the closing and like the attorney that was hiring me, he like wanted to like hit me over the head with like the package. He's just like, what did you do? So I quickly learned that that's not what you should do in a settlement. But that's how I started. I started doing real estate law in Atlanta. And then I had good friends who were brokers here in DC. And the market just seemed so much better in this area. Like we do have a much more insulated real estate market in DC just because of the federal government and stuff like that. So
what time frame is this?
I moved up here in 2007.
Okay. So that was right at the time the market was going.
It was a crazy time to move to DC and start a title company, but that's what I did. And it was a serious weed out. Like it was, realtors were getting different jobs. Yeah. Title companies were closing their doors. I think in the first 2 years of me working up here, most of my closings were like highly distressed properties. It was foreclosures. It was short sales. So I really kind of cut my teeth in this market doing gnarly deals. Yes. Right. Yeah. Which has actually, I think, won me a lot of developer clients because I know how to do really gnarly deals, and that's where developers often get the best deal because they're buying something that's deeply distressed. So, so a settlement with no real problems is just that. It's so much easier when you have easy closings versus, trickier deals. But, that's definitely what I cut my teeth on was doing those kind of really gnarly transactions back then. So, so that's what brought me up here. And I've stayed and I love this market. I think it's a really interesting market to be in. And I do love that it's insulated from a lot of the kind of market, fluctuations that are so much more severe. Had I stayed in Atlanta, the market tanked like crazy in Atlanta.
Right.
So, it's been a fun ride. So Smart Settlements is my company. We do closings in DC, Maryland, Virginia, and also Florida now too. So, yeah.
So diving a little deeper into 2007, you're doing these gnarly transactions.
Yeah.
Are these deals that were how are they sourced? Because we do a lot of developer work where they off-market deals where the banks would contact you, you would contact a developer. How are the deals structured?
Most of them were through agents.
Through agents?
Yeah, most of them were through agents. But just at that time, if the property wasn't facing foreclosure, it was a short sale. I think 75% of the transactions at one point were foreclosures or short sales. So the legal review process in those cases, it's extensive. Properties are highly distressed already. If you're facing foreclosure, You
Yeah.
probably have judgments. You probably have lien. Like there's a lot of other stuff going on, with that kind of a property. So, yeah, it's just all kinds of really interesting stuff. I remember even this one transaction where the property was facing foreclosure, and I had to take the payoff check in a cashier's check to the steps of the courthouse and actually hand it to the auctioneer in order to beat the foreclosure. Like that's how thirsty we were back then.
Wow.
To get a deal closed. Yeah. So, because once it actually gets sold,
It sounds like
it's
doing
too
business in like
late.
the 1800s.
Yeah.
It's like we have to go to the courthouse.
I took my horse up there, tied him up.
Yeah.
And yes.
No, I mean, we had to do like an escrow agreement that said to all the parties, like, because this possibly, like, what if I'm unable to like deliver the check and get it,
Right.
This is the payoff. Literally, I'm making the payoff in person to the trustee on the courthouse steps. So yeah.
Short sales are very tricky. Personally, you can get a good deal doing a short sale, but personally, I do not like them because they're so time consuming, making sure all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a negotiator on staff, or would you
We
guys
do.
work with one?
We do have a negotiator on staff. She's excellent. And I agree with you. I think for when a realtor has to do the negotiation stuff themselves, it's incredibly time consuming. And so I would absolutely suggest always using a negotiator. You guys don't get paid anymore for doing these kind of
No.
deals, by the way.
Well, let's break that down a little bit. So, short sales are a little mysterious to a lot of agents who may not have any experience with them. I've done probably a handful,
Yeah.
and I think all of them had some negotiator on the deal.
Yeah.
But tell us why you would need a negotiator in a short sale deal, and what's the role there? What's happening in the background?
Right. So basically with a short sale, what you're doing is the property is, there's not enough value in the property to pay off the mortgage in full, right? So you're requesting that the lender take what we call a short payoff, so a lesser amount than what's actually due, in order to allow the property to be sold. So in order to do that, the negotiator needs to make a case to the lender that the value requires that you take this shortfall. And a lot of lenders will be open to this because the cost of foreclosure, the time frame for foreclosing on the property, and you're probably not going to get much more than this short payoff anyway, right? So you have to kind of make this case to the lender. So the short sale negotiator is an expert at doing that. And one of the things about the short sale process is that each lender is different. So each lender has a different set of like requirements and processes for what they're going to make you do to get that approval. So it's a lengthy process. It probably takes a couple of months usually. So easily 2 to 3 months to actually get your short sale approved. So having somebody who does this all the time, they're familiar with like what each different lender is going to want and require, and kind of the process for like you're basically making a case to a lender is what you're doing. So it's time consuming, it's specific to each different lender. So I think it definitely makes a lot of sense to use a negotiator rather than just try to do it as an agent.
And that's a straightforward, easier short sale versus we did one last year and it didn't make it to closing, but there were 2 lenders involved. The taxes were not paid,
Yeah.
and then there was a condo association involved.
yeah.
So it was 4 different
Yeah.
bodies that you're negotiating with, and trying to get all of them to agree to whatever amount.
Right.
It was very tricky, and then eventually it didn't close. And,
Yeah.
and the person's still in the condos. I don't know how that's
Mhm.
working out.
Yeah, well, they might be, sometimes the lenders take their time in foreclosing. It costs them money to foreclose, and they're still going to have to deal with all of those other creditors too. So, yeah, that definitely makes it more complicated. But it's not uncommon when you have somebody facing a short sale situation, that there are other things that are delinquent as well. Like typically, because the short sale person is also someone who's not paying their mortgage. The lender will not even consider a short sale if you're current on your mortgage. So they're going to have to see that you're delinquent. Yeah.
So, fast forward a little bit to today's current market. I know during the pandemic bubble, there was a moratorium on foreclosure, so you weren't allowed to foreclose.
Right.
Now, I believe you are allowed to foreclose, and rates are going higher. Can you kind of explain to us like the current market? Are there foreclosures like there were back in 2007 or somewhere in between?
I would say definitely not like there were in 2007. And I don't think we're going to be there anytime soon either. I think the difference in the market right now is that you can probably sell your house right now. So why would you allow it to go into foreclosure? Like if you're in that kind of a situation where you can't pay your mortgage, the smart thing to do would be to get a realtor and sell your house, you know, and you can probably do that and pay off your mortgage and even maybe make a little bit of money. So they're back, but I'm not seeing like an influx of them by any means.
Going back to like the nuts and bolts of the title attorney business, can you just walk us through the role of the title attorney in the transaction from when you receive a contract to the closing? Like, what are the essentials?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very sexy process.
Totally.
Listen up, everybody. Here we go.
This is why, yeah, nobody cares.
Line by line.
Nobody cares or really
or
wants
fast
to know
forward through
about
this part. Either way.
So what we're doing, it is a really important thing, I promise. But honestly, if you're a buyer or seller, we're actually going to not try to bother you with the details of what we're doing because it's not that interesting is the truth of it. But it is important. So what we're doing, we start working on a file when we receive a ratified contract. So that's when we're going to open a file. We of course I talk to agents all the time about contracts that they're planning on or working on, or, you know, there's certainly issues that come up in advance, but we really start working on a file when we receive a ratified contract, and that's when we open escrow, so to speak. So that's when we're going to receive earnest money, and we're going to start, you know, holding money in preparation for closing, and we're going to start preparing the file for settlement. So we coordinate with all parties. We're coordinating with the listing agent, the selling agent, the seller, the buyer, and the lender if there is one. And we are first examining title and ordering everything that we have to order to prepare for closing. So we're ordering a title examination, which is basically just like the raw land records. So we're searching for judgments, we're searching for liens, we're searching for open mortgages. We need to make sure that the seller is able to convey the property to the buyer free and clear of liens and other encumbrances. So we're going to check for all those things. We also have to check the buyer, which is something I think not a lot of people realize. Like, we're actually checking a buyer for judgments and liens as well, because the minute you take title as a buyer, any judgments or liens that you have against yourself personally will attach to the property. So if you're a cash buyer, no problem. Your liens attached, that's your problem. If you have a loan, your lender wants first priority with that mortgage. They want to be first in order with the collateral, which is that property. So they don't want you to have any judgments or liens that are going to have priority over their secured interest in the property. So we're actually searching both buyer and seller for that reason. And we are gathering information from third parties. So the tax office, the homeowners association, the condo association, if there is one. In DC and Maryland, we're checking for water bills because that's actually like it's collected kind of like taxes. So we're trying to make sure that the seller actually owns the property. You'd be surprised how often we get a contract that has a seller and we run title and that person doesn't own the house, you know? So, and sometimes it's an honest mistake. Sometimes it's not, but
it's one of the first questions we're taught though. Like, it's like, make sure you're talking to the seller, right?
The right
Yes,
person.
exactly.
Yeah. The details, they do matter. Yeah. But that happens. It happens often with estates, to be honest with you. So a lot of times you'll have like, I mean, it sounds kind of like a crazy idea that somebody who doesn't own a house would like do a contract as a seller, but they don't own it. But a lot of times, you know, let's say someone passes away, you have a relative that passes away, and the person just assumes, well, I am the heir, so I'm the heir apparent here.
Right.
So let me go sell mom's house, you know. But there is a legal process that you have to go through in all the jurisdictions that I service in order to sell a piece of property. So when somebody has passed away. So you can't just assume that because you're the heir, that's all you need to do. You likely have to open probate, you know, become appointed by the court as a personal representative to sell the property and so on and so forth. So
and that process takes what, about 30, 45 days? Start to finish?
Yes, I'd say in DC and Maryland, it's about that long. So Virginia is a lot easier with regard to estate sales because in Virginia, you can file a list of heirs. So in Virginia, title vests with the heirs, like automatically when you pass away. So you can file a list of heirs in the county where the property resides, and the heirs are actually empowered to sell the property at that point. There are some other, intricacies there if there's a will and that kind of thing, but generally speaking, it is. I think everything's a little easier in Virginia, to be honest with you, with the real estate laws. But in DC and Maryland, you need to open probate, and there must be a personal representative appointed to sell the property. So I always tell realtors, ask for the letters of administration.
At the time of the listing agreement.
Yes, at the time of the listing agreement. Yeah, because you want to make sure you're dealing with the right person.
Yeah, that cap happened to me a couple of times where exactly what you just said. You go into the listing appointment. This was my mom's house. Now it's mine. Oh, great. It makes all sense. I'm the only sibling, or I'm the only child. Sign off on the listing agreement as the executor. We get a ratified contract, not to find out that you have to open up probate. And it's like, oh my God, what do we do now?
Right. Yeah.
So it was,
Yeah. I actually, this is kind of one of my niche areas because I have filed probate myself. Like when I first started working in DC and doing these kinds of transactions, I had enough of these where I'm getting the contract and then we examine title, realize, wow, you have an open probate. So with those cases, a lot of times I would actually do the probate filing and stuff. So it's become kind of an area of practice because it's kind of the intersection of like estate law and then also real estate. And so, it definitely kind of became like a specialty of mine to work on files like that. Yeah.
How would you say the industry has changed since you first started in the business? What's new? What's trending in the title business?
Definitely technology has changed a lot. When I first started doing this, we were emailing buyer and seller questionnaires. There's certain information that we need to like just kind of data entry into our file, your social, your forwarding address, stuff like that. And we used to just be emailing that to folks. And now the security laws and, every title company uses some kind of a system where you have a portal so people can work through a secured portal, kind of like the lenders do now too. Every lender is going to make you log into a secured portal so that you can share information in a secured platform so that you can receive wire instructions in a secured way. So I'd say definitely the technology is different now. I think it's better. We use a platform called Qualia that is very popular. The technology for earnest money deposit nowadays, Zocam is the app that we use, and I think a lot of title companies use it too. But you can remotely deposit your earnest money check. Remember when we used to be just like, oh, you have to like
hand over a check.
You have to hand over the check. And I actually feel like that was a lot of liability for realtors too. Yeah, because your buyer's just like giving you a check for $100,000 and then,
many times that I have a check sitting on my desk going, just like, is this going to be here tomorrow?
Right.
It's just really weird.
And I've seen many times over in our office, it's like, you go to the copier to scan your contract, and it's like, wait, here's somebody's $100,000.
Yep.
I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. I'll put it in a mailbox.
That was all the time back in the day.
Yes.
Yeah. So you don't have to do that anymore. You can remotely deposit checks. Your buyer can do it, or you can do it through those remote deposit apps. The one we use is called Zocam. But that creates a lot more security, I think. I think all of these technology things have helped to create more security for the transactions.
Quick question. I know it's interrupting here, but with the 3 bank failures, and you have FDIC insured up to $250,000, are you guys with like one of the big banks to make sure that if, God forbid, something happens and everything crashes, everyone's escrow is protected?
So we bank with a local bank, actually, which I think is pretty par for the course with all the title companies. Like I think most title companies do bank locally. But we do have protections on those accounts for sure. Yeah.
Because I'm assuming like if you have, $250,000, it seems like it's so low. And if you have 2 transactions, you probably have over $250,000.
Yeah, we have a lot in
Well,
escrow.
yeah. But maybe this is another boring type question, but at the same time, like in your is it one? So it's one singular escrow account that holds all of the escrows.
It is. Well, No. So we have
Okay.
we have separate accounts for each jurisdiction.
Okay.
Yeah. So each jurisdiction has its own separate escrow account because there are different rules and regulations for each jurisdiction.
Right.
So
Yeah.
what's the governing body that insures the accounts over the $250,000?
I don't know that there's any other
I don't think
governing
there is.
body for that.
That's just the
Yeah.
FDIC is pretty standard for the time being. But
Yeah.
but I think what you're saying is that you have other insurance
We
beyond,
do.
yeah,
We
That's
do.
what I mean. Like, okay.
Yeah.
like separate.
Right.
We have lots of insurance for all types. For everything. For
Understood.
wire fraud, for this kind of fraud. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got all the.
Have you guys ever been hit with wire fraud?
We have not. We've had attempts. Like I've certainly seen attempts. I've certainly seen it happen. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen the news stories about, other companies being hit with it and stuff. We have kind of like foiled other people's attempts. I've certainly seen customers. I can remember years ago, I wasn't with Smart at the time, but I can remember being at the closing table and I guess it was the seller talking about how somebody had sent him an email at his like AOL account, like giving him some other type of, direction and what he should do with funds or something like that. So, I think I think we've become a lot smarter as an industry. So like, I think, realtors, title companies, like we're all super aware, I think, of wire fraud now. Like we're not the ones that are going to make the mistake, but your average like buyer or seller who, they're doing this once or twice in their life.
Right.
You don't send wires often. You don't, and some of these emails that come through are super general. Like I imagine it's somebody in China sending like 1 million emails that's like, it's time to send your wire. Here are the instructions, and just waiting for somebody to be like, oh, I'm doing a closing. That's that email I've been waiting for, and then they just do it. So
I find those emails really interesting though, because there's always something in there that's just glaringly weird, like the way the signature line is. I feel like they could do a lot better with those, the scammers. I'm not trying to help scammers. I'm just saying,
Sure.
I could make it look really good. Okay.
This is a true story. Yesterday, a listing agent called on a property we're closing on tomorrow. And she said, "You're not licensed in Maryland." I'm like, "Yeah, I did." Or, "Yes, I am." So I had to go and look on Maryland website to make sure I'm licensed, which I am. She said, "I got a call from the title company saying they needed me to get your check and deliver it directly to this office." And I'm like, that's just weird. And she was very specific about the company, the name. And I'm like, there's not even a mark at this title company. I'm like, you've gotten scammed. And she's an older agent. She's like, no, it's pretty realistic. I think we're going to take the check over there. And I'm like, no, everything is legit. It's through this title company. You can go on Maryland website, see that I'm licensed. You can call the owners of our company, and that's where the check is supposed to be delivered.
Right.
But it was like, she was like so concerned that I wasn't licensed. She had to get this check to this gentleman and wherever.
Well,
Bizarre.
I think where these scams are happening now, like the way that they are sometimes effective now is that the scammer is getting into the email accounts of the third party, right? So like they're getting into the buyer's email or something like that, and they shadow their emails. Like they're literally watching your emails come and go. And if they notice that you're involved in a real estate transaction and they're savvy enough, and they kind of, swoop in at the appropriate time with the instructions about the money, you know, and just try to make it sound right, sound official, that kind of thing. So
switching gears a little bit to title insurance. I know that's another exciting topic.
Super sexy.
But we've been talking about some very challenging deals, foreclosures, short sales, estates. Can you talk our listeners through the importance of title insurance?
Yes. So title insurance is incredibly important. And I'm not saying that just because I sell it. I certainly do. But, title insurance is ensuring your ownership of the property. And for most people, this is the most expensive thing they'll ever buy, right? So the idea of like not being insured is a terrible idea, right? And hopefully you'll never need it. But if you do, you're going to be really, really happy that you bought a policy. Title insurance is a very unique kind of insurance because it is a backwards looking policy. So, like if you get homeowners insurance, if you get, auto insurance, it is insuring you against things that might happen in the future. You know, your roof blows off in a storm, or you get in a car accident tomorrow. Title insurance is actually insuring you against things that happen before you purchase the property. So, you know, things like an heir didn't sign off on that deed 15 years ago. You know, unreleased mortgages, IRS liens from previous owners, judgments. Those are the kind of things that can really make a huge impact on your ability to sell your property. So, I mean, I have seen title insurance work for people in such super, super important ways. And I've seen people be really, really sad that they didn't have a policy. I've seen people be unable to sell a property because they can't afford to pay off the previous owner issues that exist on a property and they don't have title insurance. So it's super important. I mean, I always tell people at closing, you're going to get this title insurance policy when we send you your copy package. We're going to send it all to you electronically. The title policy is like the most important document we're going to send to you. Hold on to it, keep it somewhere safe, tell relatives where you keep it. The policy lasts for life, and it even extends to your heirs. So, I mean, I am sometimes asking heirs to go and find a title policy to help them be able to sell a property. So
I've had title insurance issues come up more often in the last, like, I'd say 5 to 6 years, because there's a lot of odd loan activity and refinancing, and then different like more fly-by-night title companies that have come and gone, where people ended up doing their closings. And I've certainly had situations where we're on our way to a settlement and something pops up on the title and my seller doesn't have the title insurance policy. Yeah. And there are options to get through it, but there was one that went down to, it was like down to the wire, because he was also facing a foreclosure situation.
Oh, wow.
Somehow we got it through. But yeah, he didn't keep his title insurance policy. He wasn't a very organized person. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. So title insurance, we know if you're getting your standard Fannie Mae loan, they're going to require some kind of title insurance.
Yes.
But if you're making a cash purchase with your own funds and you're doing a normal settlement, normal title attorney like yourself, and you're saying, I don't want to buy title insurance, you can purchase a property without title insurance, correct?
You can. So when you have a loan, when you're getting a loan at closing, your lender is always going to require that you purchase a lender's title insurance policy for their benefit. That's going to insure your lender up to their loan amount. That is a non-negotiable. Your lender requires that. The owner's title insurance policy is an optional policy. So you're not required to purchase your owner's title insurance. So you could waive it. It's a terrible idea, but you could.
I had a follow-up question to that. That's a great question, Max. One time we had a $3 million sale in Capitol Hill, cash purchase, and they waived title insurance. I was like, wow.
Yikes.
That was huge.
Kind of intense.
We do a lot of new construction, and I've seen agents and I've heard buyers at the closing table. It's a 200-unit building, brand new construction. I'm the first owner. Yes, I've got a loan of whatever, so I have lender's title insurance, but I'm going to waive the owner's policy, because if I have an issue, the other 199 owners in the building have an issue.
Right.
But how does that make it better of it?
So what's your rebuttal to like that person at the closing table?
So, okay. So first of all, and this is a really common thing with new construction for some reason. So from a title perspective, it does not matter whatsoever that the improvements on your property are new. Okay. This does not make you in any better position from a title insurance perspective because there's a new build. There are actually more opportunities for liens, for mechanics liens, for example, because you've just had any number of contractors working on this property, right? So I don't know why people think this, that like if title does not start right now because this is a new build. This land has been here for a very long time, has had many, many owners over time, and it doesn't matter that the improvements are new on the property. So that it doesn't change the landscape at all. It doesn't make you more protected. Your lender's title insurance policy, the fact that your lender is getting a policy, also protects you not at all. That policy is for your lender's benefit. It insures your lender up to their loan amount. So if your lender were to foreclose upon you, that's when that title insurance policy really kicks in for them, because now they're going to take title and they want, they want to have their own, insurance over the property. So it doesn't protect you as the owner of the property at all. Like, you're not going to be able to present your lender's title insurance policy because there is a previous owner IRS lien, for example. And like, that's one of the situations. I remember one of the first times I ever saw somebody use a title insurance policy. I was doing a closing in DC. Person had bought this property. It was a developer. She'd bought the property, took 3 months to renovate, and then she's selling the property with me. She had bought it at a different title company. When we run title, we see that her seller had a $50,000 tax lien. Tax lien was not paid at her closing. For whatever reason, this was just completely missed. So in order for her to sell the property, she would need to pay that previous owner's tax lien. She had a title insurance policy. She made a claim. The insurer paid off the lien, is what happened. So she was able to close. Everything was fine. If she didn't have that policy, she would have been paying a $50,000 tax lien for somebody else. Like, it would have eaten up most of her profit from her development project, you know? So it's real. I mean, the stuff that people are able to use it for is very real and very important, for sure.
Yeah, the last time I had a buyer in a deal, and we were closing on a house using a standard title company, title insurance, and the seller had only owned the house a few years, but they had bought it from sort of a house flipper. It was kind of a little sketchy, the seller on the other side. And again, from a company, through a title company that is no longer there. And we had to sort of work with the new title insurer and the previous title insurer to help figure out how to insure against, without exceptions, these two liens that were seemingly not released.
Right.
They probably were, but the recording of it was not done properly.
And that's a really common title issue. That's probably the most common issue that I see people use their policies for, is unreleased mortgages, right? And you were mentioning in the last 5 or 6 years, you've seen kind of like more title issues. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those are just unreleased mortgages. And what's happened is, so many banks have merged, and a lot of times these things fall through the cracks. The banks don't properly release a mortgage that's actually been paid. So in order to legally release a mortgage, it's not enough that you just paid it off. You have to also record that certificate of satisfaction in land records. So if that piece of the puzzle is not done, we're unable to confirm that it's been paid. So if you have a title insurance policy, you give the policy, no problem. Like, there's not even going to be a delay in your settlement. But if you don't have the policy, it becomes a research project.
Totally.
It's like, let's research this mortgage that, by the way, is not yours, Mr. Seller. It's somebody else's. So you don't know anything about it. I don't know this previous owner's social security number. The bank is no more. It's been merged with some other bank. This thing is 10 years old or whatever it is. So it becomes just like this research project. And who knows, it could even still be due. It could even be something that's outstanding. So, yeah.
Brent, have you ever had a loan on a property where they just sort of let it slip through the cracks on your mortgage payment? I don't think so, right?
No, because it would show up on my credit report like it's certain
immediately.
Point. Yeah.
But then I love, like, it's like, okay, here, we paid off the lien, and then it's just like, oh, well, we didn't really file that correctly. So the lien's still there.
That would be scary.
That's annoying.
Yes.
That's typical. That's banking 101, though.
Banking 101.
Well, one of the things that smaller banks used to do, I think maybe some of them still do this, is you would pay off your mortgage with them, and then they would mail the certificate of satisfaction to you, the seller, with a letter that says, record this in land records.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
So, I don't know about you, but I don't think most people know how to
Wouldn't even
record
know.
anything in
No,
land
wouldn't even know.
records. They're just like, oh, cool, and they file it away somewhere, or maybe even throw it away.
Out. Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah.
What's some of the most, or I guess the most challenging title defect that you've seen in your career? Like recurring issue that just keeps coming up, and you're like, wow, this is just challenging.
I'm sure she's blocked this memory.
I would say maybe TOPA problems.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act in DC, as you guys know, is like, it's an aggressive statute. Yeah, and it's very like kind of fact intensive, and the process of giving proper notice to tenants. And the problem, I think, with TOPA that is very frustrating for agents and for sellers is that even if you do TOPA notices perfectly, okay, if you have tenants who want to make trouble for you and be adverse to the sale of the property, it's going to be a problem. Like title companies are not going to be able to close and insure. So I would say kind of like worst situations I've seen, like if I find that a file is just uninsurable, I hate to have to tell someone like I literally just can't insure this. I can't do your closing. But I would say, I have had that happen with TOPA files. Your tenants are not going away. They are contesting everything about the process. I've seen tenants where the seller has perfect TOPA notice, like everything they've provided to me is perfect. And there's a tenant that's saying, I received an empty envelope in the mail. Because you know how that you're supposed to give me like a mail receipt showing that you delivered the notice. And the tenant is like, oh, the envelope was empty, So, how are you supposed to prove that there was something in the envelope? You're going to end up in court is what's going to happen, right? So, and then when the seller's trying to pay off the tenant to get them to waive their TOPA rights or assign their TOPA rights, and the tenant is just asking for an astronomical amount of money, that doesn't make it worth it for them to even sell. So I've definitely seen those situations where the tenant wants so much money that the seller's like, you know what, I'll just wait this out and I'll wait for 3 years for this to
Can you
expire.
quantify that? I'm just curious, like what's so much money? Like what's the highest amount you've seen?
Oh, I've seen over $100,000 for a tenant.
Really?
Yeah.
Brent, I've seen crazy amounts of money asked. Like definitely over
I've
100K.
seen given. I've seen it given. Yeah.
It's just like
30, 40 that that's not even uncommon.
I'd like politically speaking in terms of like the two sides of this, I understand the why that law exists, sort of. But it's you're right, it's very aggressive and it gives a lot of leverage to the tenants I know it's not our area and jurisdiction. I know in other cities there are similar things like this. But
DC might be the most aggressive.
DC's really tough.
It's very tenant-friendly jurisdiction.
New York's tough. There's a book out there. Can't fact check me here, but it's 15 Central Park West. There was one holdout. I can't remember the hotel, but it's right next to the Trump International Tower. And there was a guy that held out, and he got over $1 million, and he got a penthouse in Park Place South, just for holding out, being the very last one. And he only lived like 2 more years after they moved him into the thing. But it's a true story of how a tenant can win out and mess everybody's lives up.
New York has some stories.
Yeah, and the definition of tenant even in DC is very, very broad. So, when I'm teaching people about how to administer their TOPA notices, I tell them to give notice to all adult occupants, because people will think, oh, well, I don't have a lease agreement with this person,
but they're in there,
so they're not a tenant. Any adult occupant of the property, practically even squatters have tenant rights in the district. One of the more dramatic tenant cases that I saw, there was a man and woman who were basically squatting in a property in Capitol Hill. And I think they each got paid about $30,000 to assign their TOPA rights. Then they still disputed that the TOPA notices even after receiving payment. And it was discovered that the woman who was squatting in the property, there were no utilities in the property. It was owned by an estate though. So like it was a person who'd passed away. All their family members were living in other states. So like they hadn't really been paying attention to what was happening with the property. And it was discovered that the woman actually owned another house like down the street. So she wasn't like, she had means, she had another property, her taxes were paid on this property. So it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, it could be a whole side hustle to just go squat in DC properties and wait until somebody pays you off.
That's interesting, right? Going a little deeper on that. Do you know what the definition of squatter, like how long do they have to be in the property before they're legally under DC law considered squatter and now they have squatter rights?
That's a really complicated question. So, what I typically would advise people is like if there is any indicia of residency, then you need to consider them as a tenant. If they've been a permissible occupant of the property, so sometimes we have people who are like a friend or a family member of the owner, and they've been allowed to reside in the property. They don't actually have a lease agreement, they don't pay any rent, but they've been allowed to reside there. Those people are tenants under DC law. Like they should be treated as a tenant. They should be given notice. And one of the things that you will notice is if you call the police, right? The police are not going to remove somebody if they show up at the house and the person has furniture in the house and pictures on the wall. It doesn't matter if you as the landlord are like, I don't know who this person is. They haven't been paying rent. They're going to tell you to go to court. There's no self-help in DC. You can't just change your locks and like boot somebody out of the property. You have to go through the legal process of getting them removed. You know, if you left your back door unlocked and, you know, a homeless person just breaks into your house and is like in the back room for a day, and the police are going to come and remove that person, right? But that's almost, I think, the barometer of like, if somebody has set up residence, that's a tenant.
Yeah.
That last example is the one that I'm seeing and hearing more about, where we as listing agents, it's fully staged. It's a developer, maybe it's a homeowner that's moved away, but it's staged. And maybe we don't get showings every day, but we've actually had one of our listings, beautiful place up in Observatory Circle. He came in through the back, so however he got into the property, but he was in there sleeping. We had to call the police. But he kept saying he set up residency there. That was his place.
Yikes.
I think one time he was in the shower.
Ooh,
he kept coming back.
Savvy homeless person.
Yes. But I'm hearing other agents too. Like I'm
I've had
seeing
that
it on
happen.
these blog sites where, you know, depending on what lockbox you have, they can break in the lockbox, get into the place, and if you haven't checked it on a week,
Wow.
the person's been living there for a week.
Right.
And then like, how do you handle that? Call the police?
Yeah, I mean, my tip for those homeless people would be travel with like picture frames and just
like,
put them up.
Yeah, because they've clearly been living here.
And
There's
there's
put some
that
orange juice in the fridge and put some family photos up, and you're probably good to go.
And there's that, not to get too much political here, but you have decampment going on in some of these places in DC. So they get removed all their stuff. They can take their personal stuff and go to some for sale sign and unlock the property.
If they're savvy enough to do that. But yeah, I've definitely had that happen in listings too, where they were staged and, you know, someone got in through a window, and it was really creepy when I stopped in there one day and I was like,
that's an interesting experience.
Yeah. I mean,
somebody's been sleeping in my bed.
Well, but he was remarkably like, it wasn't too messed up. Okay. But it was like, something's off here. And I don't want to share the story on here, but it was definitely weird. And so we cleaned the place up. We fixed how he got in.
Did you confront him? Like, was he there when you were there?
All right, then I will tell the story. First, let me just go back. I want to two things. You used the word indicia a second ago. That's a word that's never been used on this podcast. Okay, that is a like high level vocabulary word, and I don't know if it'll.
Google that later.
Yeah, I don't think Brent's gonna be all right. Indicia, I like that.
Indicia of residency.
I like that.
Yeah.
So, no, this gentleman had gotten into the place through a window. So we went over, cleaned everything up, cleaned all the staging up, and sort of repaired the window as best we could. It was like a screen. And I was like, well, clearly this guy will see that we've been back in the unit and cleaned everything up, and he won't come back in. And the police who were there, like, oh, he'll come back. And I was like, okay. So he came back. And so I went back there again like a few days later just to check, and he was in there.
Oh, gosh.
He was like in the bathroom in the back of the unit, like with the door closed, being very quiet. And so I had the police come back, and they were like yelling in there. I'm like, please don't break any doors or anything, you know, just like, because I had the keys. And so I'm like, I don't think he's in here. Like, they're like, can you see inside that door? I'm like, no, I can't. They're like, he's in there.
In here.
Yeah. Oh, they knew exactly what they're doing. And they got in there, and he was there, and it was the same guy. And my sellers came down from Bethesda. It was because it's this unit they owned, and they came down from Bethesda, and they were like, they just let him go, because what are you going to do? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, yes, he disrupted the place and caused some damage, but
Right.
there's nothing really.
Well, just be glad he didn't send like a notice trying to
Yes.
exercise TOPA
Right,
rights.
right. No, he did. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Right. And demand 50 grand or something like that.
I mean, but it was
Yeah.
just it was like a kind of honestly really sad moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've seen that, and I know you saw that at that other house up in Observatory. And I had another client. Actually, I wasn't a listing agent for that one, and he was selling it with a different agent, but it was a house in Chevy Chase, and he had a gentleman move into the basement there too. It was a brand new renovation house that was staged, and like
he's like, perfect. They put the furniture in.
I mean, yeah, it's like nice stuff in here.
Beautiful, yeah.
We had a listing up in Columbia Heights, and one of our agents on our team, I didn't see it, but somebody broke in and they had like a binger, and there were like needles and drugs all over.
Oh boy.
And I can't remember if someone on our team like swept it all away and put it in the trash, but there's a hierarchy you're supposed to go through. You're supposed to call, I think, the police, and like the needles and syringes, all that stuff has to be delicately handled. You can't just like throw it in the trash.
Right.
Yeah, there's some crazy stories out there.
Yeah.
Real quick, I know one more topic I wanted to go over. I don't know if this was on our cheat sheet or not. A lot of agents are now doing the whole JVs.
That's exactly what I was going to go to.
Yeah,
exactly what I was going to go to.
Yeah, they're doing the JVs. I don't know if you're doing
joint
them
ventures.
or joint ventures. Agents get kickbacks or whatnot. I mean, what are your thoughts on the whole JV thing?
So, we're aware.
Are you in a joint venture?
No,
Okay,
we're
you're
not. We don't do joint ventures. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but the FBI has actually been cracking down on the joint ventures right now. So a lot of brokerages and title companies have recently received subpoenas for all of their communications and records related to the JVs, because I think it's definitely sort of a gray area, and I mean, it's clearly a way to try to circumvent the RESPA laws that disallow kickbacks to agents. Right. So, yeah, it's not something that we do because we do consider it to just kind of be too much of a gray area. We decided that, I think we saw that kind of really making waves like a year ago, probably. And, we talked about it. The partners we had meetings where we kind of discussed like, what is this thing that people are doing? And it's kind of a different way because people were like creating a company that's like jointly owned, but it's really just kind of like a shell company. It's not a real company. It doesn't really have its own employees and stuff like that. So it's probably not going to stand up to like legal scrutiny was our concern. And so we decided to just kind of steer clear of that kind of an arrangement. But yeah, I mean, recently, I've had agents share with me like the emails that they've gotten from title companies that are like, sure, I know you've received this subpoena, as have we, like this, yeah. So it's just a little scary. So, well, in retrospect, I think we're glad that we were like, we're going to sit this one out.
Yeah. But in practice with the joint venture stuff, I mean, we have, as you are clearly aware of, when there's a listing, the listing agent will put in the remarks, seller prefers whatever title company.
Right.
I don't know that that's 100% accurate. It's more a representation of use this title company because we have a joint venture.
Right.
So, we don't do joint ventures, but I certainly have agents that will put me in the remarks of like, seller prefers this title company. So I think that sometimes you just have a relationship with a title company. And by the way, there are things that are very legal and that have been around for a really long time where title companies are supporting agents in a way that is very RESPA compliant. So for example, if Brent has a broker's open and we, co-sponsor that broker's open with him, I get to meet other brokers at his event, but I bring champagne and I bring food, or, like that kind of thing is totally legal and totally okay. Like there are different ways to still have kind of like a relationship that is beneficial with your title company outside of the JV thing, So, yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with them putting that in there, putting that note in there. I don't think it necessarily means that there is a JV. It could. It's a fair question. They would have to disclose it if there is, by the way. So,
what about flat out just agents who own their own title companies? Like, yeah, that's another aspect.
That is a thing. That is a thing. And that's pretty legal, by the way. I think that, I think it's on the other agent to decide if that benefits them to have a company that is, in bed in that kind of a way.
Yeah.
With the agent on the other side. Yeah.
It's one thing that every title or every closing I usually go to, the title attorney doing the closing usually says, I don't represent the buyer, I don't represent the seller, I represent the contract.
Right.
And how can that really be true if one side of the party is getting a kickback?
True. Yeah. I can't say I disagree with you.
But I guess it is a kickback because there's an income aspect to it. But the idea of the joint venture or the affiliated business is that it's not a kickback. You're literally in business with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
But I'm not correcting you. I'm just saying, like, a kickback is definitely a
negative
negative legal aspect to it's a consumer protection thing.
Yeah.
Right. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know of some agents who have been in situations where they dealt with the title company that was co-owned by their brokerage, for example, and things went left in the settlement, and then their clients were very upset with them, the agent, and the agent felt very unprotected in that situation. And I remember this particular agent who's very savvy, and she was like, there are all of these disclosures that the title company and my brokerage had signed to protect them.
Yeah.
But there was nothing to protect me or my reputation with my client when this went south. And then my client's looking at me like, well, you didn't even really discuss with me that this title company is actually owned by your brokerage,
Yeah.
Or I could see that happening the other way too, that title company is owned by the other agent's brokerage, and now we have this dispute and I don't feel like I am, being treated fairly in this equation. So
in the world of DocuSign, I mean, usually the buyer or seller are focused on the main terms, and it's one of those affiliated documents just thrown at the back of the package, and it's like you're not even discussing it with them. It's like you're talking price, contingencies, closing day, EMD, all of that up front, and then the other 30 pages are important, but they're not being discussed.
Right. It's the boilerplate stuff.
Right.
That's just,
Well, I think we covered all the topics really well.
Yeah.
Actually,
Any other
fantastic
topics you want to discuss, or anything about smart settlements you want to say?
Follow me on Instagram. Smart Evelyn JD is my Instagram handle. Follow Smart. Visit Smart's blog. We give actually lots of tips and information for agents and for buyers and sellers and for developers on our website. We really try to empower realtors and make them better. So that's really like our goal with all of our classes and with all of our social media content. So follow us, close with us. Yeah, we'd love to see you at closing.
Fantastic. Okay, Brent's going to hit you with some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
5 easy questions. What is your food kryptonite?
My food kryptonite. Caviar.
Caviar?
Yeah.
Well, it's not like you just like walk down the street and like, oh, there's a caviar spot.
No,
I have to stop in.
Well, Kinship in DC, in my opinion, has like the best caviar. It's served on like homemade potato chips with creme fraiche. It's amazing.
I'm not into caviar. You like caviar?
I like caviar. Yeah. It's not,
I was thinking like cookie, ice cream, brownie. It's like caviar. I'm
like a Levain
fish
cookie.
Eggs. Yes. What's your go-to vacation spot?
Anywhere with a beach, something tropical. And I like something that's in like an urban area too. Like I've gone to tropical places that were too remote for me. Like I need to go to the mall after I go to the beach. So
I get that.
Outside of title, what do you like to do as a hobby?
I'm really into fitness, so I love working out. Weight training is currently my hobby.
Weight training. So what is your, I guess, go-to thing in the gym?
I like doing kind of like a HIIT workout with heavy weights. So
HIIT or hip?
HIIT. It's high intensity interval training.
Yes,
okay.
There you go.
Yeah. I don't make it to the second level of my gym. I'm down at the basketball court.
That's.
I've started doing solid core recently too. In like the last
Okay.
year, I started doing solid core, which I like a lot.
You just won the Powerball. What's next?
Ooh, world travel.
World
And
travel.
lots of caviar. Caviar and rosé. Let's couple it with rosé.
So Saturday night, you're scrolling through the TV. This movie pops on, and you're always going to stop it at the beginning, middle, or towards the end. Which movie is it?
Maybe maybe Big with Tom Hanks. I love that movie.
That's a great movie.
Oh no, I have a better one. Manhattan Murder Mystery.
I don't
Have
even
you
know
heard
that.
of this?
No.
It's a what's his name? The director.
Woody Harrelson?
Woody. It is Woody. It's
Is it?
What?
what is his name? He got in so much trouble. He used to be married to Mia Farrow.
Yeah, the one that has
Woody Allen.
Woody
Woody
Allen.
Allen. Woody
Thank
Allen.
you.
Woody Allen.
Yes, Woody Allen. This is so I love like a suspenseful kind of mystery, but this is also hilarious. I highly recommend it.
Okay.
Right on.
Yeah.
All right, Evelyn Miller, Smart Settlements. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, guys.
Do you have any charities that you'd like to give a shout out to? We like to do donations to charities.
Oh, sure. So Always Believing is actually a foundation I'm on the board of, and it benefits young girls, and they have a lot of ties with like Boys and Girls Club as well. So that would be the other is Boys and Girls Club.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Keyed In with your hosts, Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. For more information on selling your home, find us online at keyedinpodcast.com. Remember to subscribe to Keyed In on Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Keyed In Podcast, at Rabin Max, and at Brent E. Jackson. And follow Max on TikTok at MaxwellRabin_properties.